Here comes everybody.
Your favorite time.
Hi, Robert. Yes,
Hello.
you're right. It is my favorite time. Robert, do you know Michael?
We haven't met formally, but I've watched him a number of occasions.
Yeah.
Nice
This is
you
Robert
too. Good to
Ragucci.
see you. Good to
Yeah.
see you, Robert. I've seen you before too.
Yeah, Robert.
I've seen you before.
I've seen you before.
He's
I
a
recognize your voice too.
regular. Yeah. And Anka's here from Germany. Hi, how are you? Hello.
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Oh, and Manal's coming, Michael.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, there's everybody. It's so good to put faces to names, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I see a bunch of competitors here.
There's the sympathetic system speaking.
We'll have to get some good co-regulation going.
Yeah, we're going to turn it into co-regulation
Yeah.
or
Such
play.
an important topic, you know, competition. I mean, it impacts all of us everywhere, right? And you just say the word, and most of us, I think, probably go up into sympathetic.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is such an important topic, looking for different models for being
Mhm.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and trying to navigate a world that's sort of framed in competition, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
Absolutely.
the systems we're navigating are built in that approach of competition.
Absolutely. Even what we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah. The speaker circuit is full of competition.
that's a good point.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Oh,
If you want to, it's always fun to put either in the chat or beside your name where you are. So we get a real sense of where we all are in the world. Michael's in Santa Barbara, right?
yes.
California.
And I have my heat turned on. Yes. I had a little discussion with my wife before turning this on because I said, we can't turn our heat on. It's summer. And she pointed out, where does that rule come from?
Right.
Exactly.
I'm in Toronto and it's hot.
Shemina, hello from Colombia.
Oh,
Awesome. Good to see you.
wonderful.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
And
here.
Carrie's from Calgary.
Nice.
They're Canadian. And Rashan is in Denmark.
Hmm.
Does everybody know Rashan? Rashan is my, what are you? It's not really just an assistant. I mean, he teaches me lots of things. I don't know what I would do without him, frankly.
Hi, everyone.
In big trouble. Yeah, but we have fun together. We make slides together. That's really fun. He keeps me on track. It makes a nice newsletter. Okay, so let's start.
Okay.
Michael, you were going to, I was suggesting that you do one of your wonderful breath exercises, practices.
Sure. So let's all, if we would, just meet ourselves wherever you are, right? There's no right, there's no wrong. And if you just check in with yourself, if you're seated or standing or whatever you're doing, just see if there's a movement you can make in your body that makes you feel a little more comfortable or that matches your energy. Whatever that is. And there may not be anything. And then if you would, notice whatever other sounds you hear in the environment around you. And see if you can find any sound or even a sight, if your eyes are still open, or a smell, anything that also would be comforting or reassuring or welcomed. And then let's do the same with your breath. So we're not changing anything necessarily, but just see if there's a certain way of breathing that would match how you feel, or that would add a little more comfort. And see if just feeling your breath, if anything changes. While still noticing any other sounds that are reassuring or smells. We're just trying to see what is available to us that can help us feel a little more comfortable, or that help match our energy, or that bring us into this space. And let's just take a couple of breaths together, where as we're breathing in, and I love this, this is from La Soraya, as we're breathing in, saying to yourself right here, and as you're breathing out, saying to yourself right now. So as you're breathing in, right here, and as you're breathing out, right now. And again, there's no there's no right and there's no wrong. However you are in this space, you're showing up human. You're showing up how you are. And if your eyes were closed, just allow them to open and take a look at everyone on the screen and see if you can find a face or many faces that again are reassuring or welcoming or comforting. And just allow yourself to feel a little bit of welcome and warmth from another. It's good to see all of you. Thank you. Thank you for that. So in my opinion, practices don't need to be they don't have to be long. They don't have to be controlling. They can be receiving what is available, if it is. And that's sort of a practice that I would call the habit of safety, where in any moment, we allow ourselves to maybe find who or what is sending warmth and welcome and reassurance and comfort to us. And maybe it's only available in our own body, or maybe it's available through another, or maybe it's available in a bird or a tree or a sound or a smell. Thank you. Thanks for that opportunity, Jan.
Thank you, Michael. So, Michael, we should introduce you, Michael Allison. Michael and I are both teachers with the Polyvagal Institute. And Michael teaches, what is the name of your course? The Play Zone?
So I have an introductory course that's called the Play Zone. And that's really a methodology built on polyvagal theory that is more specific to optimizing our wellness, our resilience, and our performance. And then I do another course that's more in depth, and I do it with my colleague and dear friend, Maddie Shisko, who's here on the call also. And that is a more in-depth, deeper dive. That is a certificate course for wellness and performance coaches.
So today we are talking about competition.
Yeah. And turning competition into co-regulation, or turning competition into play. And when you and I had talked about what we might talk about today, that is actually the title of a chapter that I'm writing in the book that we're collaborating, that there's a whole bunch of us are collaborating on. So I thought it would be a good topic to talk about, so I can actually start the chapter.
Yes, I was going to ask you if you started yet.
I started it, but
Yeah.
very lightly, very lightly.
This
So,
is, currently the title is The Science of Embodiment,
mhm.
right? And the Norton book. And I'm writing one on the embodied assessment and treatment tool, and you're writing one on
Turning competition into co-regulation.
co-regulation. Okay. So talk to us. Tell us a little bit about this to get us started.
Sure. So competition, I even looked up, sort of when I was beginning my chapter, I looked up the definition of competition. And it's interesting because the way it's framed, whether it's Webster's or Oxford, is it's framed in a place that already creates a threat in your physiology. It talks about sort of striving to defeat another, or an attempt to gain resources and prove that you're sort of successful, or even it used the word better than your opponent, right? And so all of those words and phrases in and of themselves sort of come from a more threat-oriented physiology. Whereas co-regulation and play are grounded in safety, grounded in enoughness, grounded in sort of already connected to what it is you're doing, connected to who you might be, quote, going up against, right? Connected in your intention and your body supporting that intention. And also this already feeling enoughness, or feeling good enough to belong.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and I do a lot of work with other coaches and actual performers, or coaches of performers. And whenever safety or connection, or this felt knowing in one's whole body of being good enough to belong, whenever any of those three are interrupted, competition is fight. Competition is a battle. Competition is trying to get something you don't have. Whereas when we feel safe and we feel connected and we feel enoughness and the sense of belonging, competition can turn into co-regulation. Competition can morph into play. And so that's sort of the quest that I'm on with others. And the bigger question is, how do we navigate a world or an environment or a culture that everyone else playing the game is grounded in fight and defending and protecting and getting whatever's theirs at any cost? How do we do that? And it's a tricky question, right? But that to me, it's not just in sport. It's not just in performing. It's in schools, right? And when you had Heather Abernathy on talking about the medical school training, to me, it's in that. It's the same. It pervades everything in a lot of our culture. And what we see play out over time is we see a lot of behaviors that are not healthy. We see addiction. Eventually we see people breaking down. We see burnout, right? We see a lot of these sort of unfolding of unhealthy behaviors or unhealthy lifestyles or disease or disconnection because of how we're actually relating to the competitive environment in which we are living in or playing in. So it's a much bigger, right? It can be, so when I talk about sports, I expand it out, like look at it as any interaction, or look at it as in any system you're sort of navigating in.
You know what? I'm going to spotlight us for a little bit, Michael, so that people can see us better just for a while, and then we'll go back. Because I think it's nice when people can really see you more.
And please, anyone, just what Jan and I talked about, anyone at all, anytime, just raise a hand or jump in.
Yeah.
And
or put it in the chat.
yeah, whatever you'd like.
Yeah. So yeah, feel free to jump in. So that's interesting, because what you're saying is that how we experience competition depends on what state we're in. So when we're in a ventral state, competition is, what would you say, is more like play, or would then we're
It could be, yeah.
Or
It's an opportunity. Well, first, it's an opportunity to challenge yourself. It's an opportunity to step into the unknown. It's an opportunity to look at your opponent as someone giving you this chance to elevate, this chance you wouldn't have. That's a whole different experience, right? Now that it doesn't always play out that way. All right, so I'll give you an example. This just happened. So I love to talk about recent events because I figure they come into the story for a reason, right? And so this is a kid who's playing. So the way professional tennis works is you have to play sort of these ITF events, these lower level professional events, and you have to get enough points to really start getting into what you see on TV. So when you watch tennis on TV, you're only seeing the players who are realistically in the top 100 in the world. To get to the top 100 in the world, you spend often years playing in these lower level tournaments, but it's still really important to you. It is what you're doing. It's your life. Okay, so it's one kid that I've been working with for a long, long time. He's playing in an event against a friend who he also plays doubles with in the event. Okay, so now they're playing each other. And for whatever reason, this opponent is doing gamesmanship. Okay, so what does that mean? It means he's doing things that are still within the rules, but they're marginal. Okay, so like an example, you walk up to the line, there's a certain amount of time, and you kind of get set, and then but something distracted me, and you walk back away and you start over. And so you do these sort of things, and this was going on all the time. So he's kind of delaying stuff. My kid calls for the umpire. The umpire now is sort of watching, but from their perspective, it was really close. They didn't want to give him a time violation. This went on. So that was one thing. There's all these little examples. So the kid that I work with, and this, you can see this in life, right? So again, expand this out into life. These are violations of expectancy to him. He's like, he's my friend. He's my doubles partner. Why is he doing gamesmanship against me? And so that's where it starts. And he starts having a bodily reaction to all of this. He starts getting more and more unsettled, more ramped up, until then his narrative is, what a jerk. He's no longer my friend. How could a friend treat me like that? And it turns into this whole thing. So you watch this whole thing plays out. So somehow he still battles through this match. He ends up losing in a third set tiebreaker, 13-11, which is, for tennis players, it's a big deal. And now he's so upset and so locked into the story that when they go up to shake hands, he can't even shake his hand, and he sort of does like this and turns away. And then that guy goes, what are you doing? What, you're my friend. How could you, and he's like, well, and then it turns into this whole thing, and everybody's like, no, enough. And it almost escalates into a fight. And so the kid that I work with the next day calls me. I wasn't at the match. So he calls me and he tells me, and he's at this point now he's feeling shame. He's feeling guilt. he's feeling really heavy about this whole experience. Like, gosh, I couldn't believe I couldn't even shake his hand. That's not like me. I just, right. And so that's just one example of playing in a game that the opponent is playing a different game. It's a different game, right? And so we talked through all of this. Of course, your body's going to have a response. Of course. Yeah. And at the same time, that narrative you're telling yourself about this guy isn't necessarily true. He's not a total jerk. He still can be your friend. It's just the way he is looking at and responding to competition. He's coming at it from not having enough. You were coming into it going, he's my friend. I, of course, want to win, but I'm not going to throw that off the table. Right? But it doesn't mean your friend isn't actually your friend. It's just how he's responding.
Friend can behave in certain ways in a different context.
Absolutely.
That's that way of behaving.
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't mean that was even, it doesn't mean that behavior was aligned with his intention, which we know too, right? So there's so many lessons in that story that it became an opportunity for the two of us to really talk through. Yeah. For him to really grow and develop. But first was getting through that shame and that blame for responding that way.
Yeah, this is so central because it's central to the work that I do too, right? In trauma and addiction. And what we're talking about here is the intervening variable.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah. So depending on what state, Deb has that great little phrase of story follows state. So yeah, there it is.
Yeah, in this case, the story followed the state because he had that interruption, that violation. Like how would someone do that to me? We're buddies. And then the story fed the state. And then he got into that loop, that internal feedback loop, and he wasn't able to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And that even when you're resourced, and this kid's very resourced, but even that, it was such a powerful cue. That was a massive cue to him because he values friendship in a way that's just not even an option. Right.
And also because of the context, right? The stakes
were high.
So when you combine those two things, no wonder he got triggered.
He got big time.
Yeah.
And then he also felt like the ref, it's such an example too of once you sort of get locked into a more threat-oriented physiology, how biased you are to only see more threat. And so when the referee wasn't actually interrupting, he now felt like the referee was against him. And then certain things would occur, right? The whole world's against him. Certain things would occur and it'd be like, oh, now luck's against me. The ball flops over the net. I mean, he was telling me all these things and it was so evident of what we understand, that once we're in that threat-oriented physiology, the world is a threat.
Yeah.
Right.
I had that experience just recently in speaking at this conference in London. So there were other speakers there, of course. And it was really interesting to see how some of us were really able to quickly form these deep connections about the shared work, particularly those of us that have been doing it for a long time. And then there were other people there that were younger and much more into that kind of fear-based competitive thing, and wanting to kind of like own this thing that they did. Whereas those of us who felt more safety and connection together were really enjoying the commonalities of what we do. Yeah.
So that's the question. So that's the question. Can we, so when we actually don't feel safe, or we don't feel connected to what we're doing and who we're doing it with, right? Or we don't feel like actually we have enough skill to be in the game, right? How do we help those? Because what if it's true? What if one of those is true? Like where you actually aren't at the same level of resource
Yeah.
those playing with you. So how do we help? How do we help so that doesn't just kick into behaving in ways that don't align with your intention? That's really what we're after, right? Because we can help give resources that would settle the body. Okay. We can help really kind of go, okay, you can learn to breathe differently, carry yourself differently, put your attention on those resources that are available to you to help your body feel safe. Okay. So we can do that. We can also help you really, even truly feel like I'm really connected to Jan. Like I'm really connected to everyone here. But what if it's factually true that my level of skill doesn't match your level of skill and his level of skill, right? And so like, how do we bridge that part of that? Because it really comes down to that, like that sense of belonging. So the reason I'm saying that, so this is a question that we can all kind of ponder. So I work with this other kid who just made it on to a high level Division I team. Okay. He can get very safe in his body. Okay. He can also connect to what he's doing, but inside he truly doesn't believe he's as good as the other players on the team and actually belongs there. Now I can see it, observing it, and I can say factually, you have the skill, you have the physical capacity, you have the strategies, you have the experience, you actually do belong, but he doesn't believe it.
Is the story he's telling himself.
Yes, and he's been telling himself, okay? So how do we sort of hasten that process? A lot of people kind of get that sense of belonging through prior experience of belonging, right? Through prior experiences of being successful in their domain.
Yeah.
How do you get that first experience? Right? Or how do you, even if you have that experience, but you don't actually let it land,
Right.
you
So
still haven't gotten that. That's the question. I don't know. It's different for everyone. That's why I'm asking the question, right? Like that is the toughest one. To me, that is the toughest question.
From a therapeutic point of view, that's a very common thing, right? People live with these big critics inside them.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Exactly.
how do you change that narrative? So
Right.
If we think about polyvagal theory, one way you can work with trying to change that narrative is shifting the state.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I think one of the things I found really powerful with that is to work in groups.
Mm-hmm.
When you work in groups, you have a chance to see how other people are having some success with that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of, yes, I really struggled with that too. And then you can kind of co-regulate with their process
Mm-hmm.
of beginning to shift that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the group thing is a really powerful vehicle for that.
Yeah, you're bringing up a really good point, right? So that same team, before he came on it, which I'll do again this next season, now that he's part of the team, that whole team the year before, each one of those 12 players acknowledged to each other that they all have that same fear of not being good enough to be really part of and included on the team.
Beautiful.
Right. And that too. So my approach is to understand that is natural, like what you just said. That's very, very, very human. And it's also in our biology. It's in our body. We have to feel that we belong, because that's how we survive. That's how
we also have to have, in a sense, a kind of somewhat critical bias to watch out for something dangerous that could, hurt us, right?
Sure.
A lot of what we're saying, I think, and a lot of what we say, right, in polyvagal theory is about reframing.
Yeah. Relating. So in my language, relating to how your body is reacting, relating to how you're feeling in a way that helps you stay on your own side.
Because you can attribute, for example, with say that critical voice, instead of saying, oh, what's wrong with me? You can say, oh, that's the part of me that's watching out and trying to keep me safe.
Yes. Yes.
And then as you reframe it like that, the shame shifts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You, or at least you give yourself an opportunity to interrupt that critic feeding more of the bodily response that locks you even in more of a threat-oriented physiology.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So you give yourself a moment.
So we got a question here from Anka.
Okay.
Actually, that's a question, but it's a wondering. It's like, it's a competing area, right? Even in the team, they're competitors.
Yes.
So how do you belong there? If you feel that competing energy, you need to be a really strong mental person to be over this competing. And if you're a teenager, you're in that growing process, your brain changes and everything. So building that ventral capacity needs to come from the coach. The coach needs to give them the feeling of belonging in this team. So I guess it needs to have a co-regulation factor from the top. Because in between the teenagers, that's difficult. Yeah.
You're so spot on, which is why a coach that actually builds a trusting relationship with each player gets that. That's exactly it. Whereas a coach that says, this is how it works, and it's very much of a hierarchical organization, it doesn't happen. Or when the players actually don't trust the coach, right? That's exactly it. And the coach is responsible for creating this culture that, yes, acknowledge you, each of you is, quote, competing for your position on the team.
Yeah.
However, each of you at the same time is vital to this team. Each one of you, you play a huge role here. And it's really important, and it's really valued. And I see you, I hear you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe your coachee is very sensitive and he can sense that there is some, like, maybe the message is that, but there's something, a mixed message. There's a mismatch. And then, of course, it makes it really hard to belong in that space, even if you want to. So maybe choosing his safety not to belong is a safety thing for him, that he can compete and stay in his trench.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah, see, what I see playing out with a lot of these young men, right, is more of this posturing. I call it posturing. They're sort of, they're posing as though they feel like they've got this.
Yeah.
When in reality, when you strip it away, they actually don't feel that way. And that was why it was really nice for them all to share that. Even the number one player on the team, to share with the guys who never get a chance to play that, hey, I feel the exact same way. Like, so to me, the first part is acknowledging it and really bringing it to awareness, even in the whole team, right? And then how do we acknowledge it? Yes, we are competing for different roles, but how do we do it in a way that isn't about looking at you as the enemy? And again, I agree with you. That starts with the coach creating that culture.
We've got a couple of more questions. So Rob.
Thank you, Anka. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Michael. I was thinking about the underlying dynamics in holding on to the less than position. And when you learn that in your family, holding on to it is actually a way of belonging to the family that puts you down. When you're talking about the posturing, that again, that's a way of belonging. In the young male culture, you assume the postures that your group assumes. It's a way of belonging. I've been reading Steve Forges's paper on polyvagal pathways to compassion. And it seems like the cultivation of compassion to meet the pain of the fight or flight, even the pain of empathy. Without that compassion for yourself and for your competitor, I don't think there's no way to contain the sympathetic response that I'm in danger.
I couldn't agree with you more, you know, and that it's, to me, you can't, it works both ways. The compassion enables you to be with those bodily experiences that you would normally then just posture in, right? Or pretend or repress. But to get to compassion, you have to have enough safety, connection, belonging to get into the physiological state that enables compassion to emerge from.
Yeah, as Steve says, compassion is only maintained in the context of safety.
Yeah.
And he said, interesting, in the contemplative traditions, we can get to compassion without co-regulation.
We can get to compassion without co-regulation.
Yeah. And I actually thought the name of your talk was going from compassion to co-regulation. But you see what you want to see.
Well,
Thanks.
I look at, I'll follow up more on the compassion piece because it's a really important piece to me too. And I did write a small paper with Steve on this. And I sort of posed the question that empathy precedes compassion and that we toggle back and forth. And in a relationship, in order to fully co-regulate, the way that we build the foundation for co-regulation is the empathy, which shows the other that we get what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
But then we move back into our own enoughness, our own safety, that we can then be compassionate. So it's the empathy, compassion moving back and forth that actually builds the co-regulation in a relationship.
Yeah, I agree. Empathy is a dysregulated state, and they've got the brain studies to prove that. But actually, that's the vulnerability. You have to see me feeling your pain, and then you need to see me responding to my pain and your pain with compassion, as opposed to joining you in shame.
Yeah, and just staying there and spiraling.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got some more. Annette?
So I love what I love about this too is that we're seeing athletes as human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's not the culture. So thank you.
Michael, hi. Speaking of culture, my question branches both the world of athletics and the business world. So oftentimes the culture in both worlds really supports this zero-sum game and competitiveness. And there is sort of that truth to, did my competitor get the contract and I didn't? Did my competitor win and I lost? So when we're dealing with that as a reality, and neuroception is going to pick that up as the reality of this game we're in, whether it's business or athletics, how do you work with the neuroception that's going to kind of keep returning to this is zero sum?
Yeah, great. And you're factually absolutely correct, right? And so first off, acknowledging and recognizing that you are going to have a bodily reaction to their fire, to their underlying, I am in a battle. You are going to feel that. Absolutely. Right. That is a cue of threat to you. Mm-hmm. And that's why, in my opinion, that's why we falsely label that those who fight the most are the winners, are the champions, make it to the top. I believe there's another level. Mm-hmm. I believe your highest level, and we know that because when people describe the flow state, they're not battling, they're not fighting. There's no longer a fight, right? So there is a higher level, but yet at the same time, when you're in an environment facing let's just say in a relationship or in an interaction where they don't have your best interests at heart, where they are all for themselves, you're going to have a bodily reaction to that. So now what do you do? And I'm saying that my goal in my own life and in those that I work with is that to feel that, have my resources, have my way of staying enough in my safe place, in what I call my container of safety, that I can still, as best I can, align my behaviors, align the expression of my skill set in ways that actually match my intentions, my true intentions.
Yeah.
But I still come back to the same question is, what if we don't really have enough resource yet? What if we really don't? Right. And so we have to spend more time building those resources.
And then
Go ahead.
in what you just described, which makes complete sense, is it a continual process of coming back into ventral, just continually throughout the competition or throughout that period of time that you're competing for the contract, that your neuroception will take you to sympathetic and then regulating back into ventral?
That would be the optimal goal, right? And technically that would be using the vagal brake, right? And not fully losing the social engagement system, having it somewhat there at any moment.
Yes.
But in reality too, that doesn't always happen. And sometimes, so I also teach, at least in athletics, that actually sometimes it's perfectly okay to intentionally go into fight, not to hurt another. But when you realize that you're actually falling, sort of moving down the trajectory, more towards checking out, shutting down, right? Escaping, or even just literally shutting down. It's okay to deliberately mobilize some energy with some intensity, knowing that, okay, I'm fighting now, I'm actually fighting, but I'm doing it with awareness and intention. With the goal of getting back into play, back into enoughness. So yes, ideally, you're just using different levels of vagal brake, engaging, pressing and releasing, social engagement, but that's not how it always plays out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Beth. Hi, Beth.
Hi, such a rich and interesting conversation here. So just had two different points I'll try to throw out quickly. One was in terms of developing the resources with the narratives, that inner narrative, I don't belong. And this sort of building on, I think, what was said, but I find what I found helpful with some of the people I work with is really cultivating these qualities of mindfulness and the self-compassion piece. So that mindfulness of being able to at least be aware of the narrative, even if we can't always change it, or we don't, the alternative may not feel,
true, might not feel true
right now to us, but just the ability to observe our own thinking and recognize that that is coming from this survival circuitry, and that is, just a mental construct that I can observe from, a place of awareness rather than being caught in it, and the self-compassion piece around kind of co-regulating with that part of me that's feeling like I don't belong, and recognizing that is just a part of me, that's not the whole of me. And there's this observing self that can kind of hold that with some kindness, with some sense of a common humanity.
Yeah, I like both of those points, right? In that I often teach that when we recognize that we are in a narrative that is self-destructive, or that is more survival based, or not enoughness, that is just information. It's not necessarily factually true, right? And that's also the time now to, what can I do to find a little more comfort, a little more safety, a little more connection, a little more vagal control, right? What can I do? Versus being looped into that story. And that's not always easy. Like that player I talked about, he knows that. And we've talked a lot about it, and he's done it successfully in many other games, but not in this one, right? And so there's that other part now. So when we blow it, how do we relate to ourselves and what went down when we blew it. And that was what we really talked through, right? Is we are going to blow it. I still blow it, and I do this stuff every day and I still blow it, right? We all blow it. So it's to me, it softens the edges, having this sort of understanding and this approach to life and this way of relating to ourselves and others. It just softens the edges around our humanity, our own mistakes. It softens all of those edges, and it allows us to come back into enough safety and connection and belonging that we can actually behave in ways that align with our intentions and interact in ways that truly match the love and warmth and benevolence we really want to give. That's just sort of been buried because of all of the defenses, right? But underneath, and that's what I love when Steve articulates that polyvagal theory really is, it's telling us who we really are when we're safe enough and trust that it's safe enough to be who we really are, which is benevolent and kind and generous and cooperative and collaborative and co-regulatory, right? And to me, competition is just when we're not who we really, really are. That's really it.
So would you say, Michael, that there is no such thing as healthy competition? You know that term?
No, I would say there is healthy competition. I would just label it a different word based on what I looked up, the definition of competition. I think the word competition itself isn't healthy because it's about proving you're superior, defeating another, the way we define it. I would say it would be called something where it's a healthy challenge. It's building resilience. And it's also an opportunity to elevate, to go places we couldn't do alone. That to me that's the journey of what competition is.
And would that also be, to be a little bit of devil's advocate, that you could feel really good about yourself if you were the best?
Sure. Yeah. You could feel good about there. I don't see any. Yeah, I don't see any problem with feeling good about yourself or feeling.
But if you're the best, feeling good because you're the best.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That to me is a resource, but that's not necessarily. That wouldn't be where I'd put my identity, though. I think that's a difference.
That's a really interesting point, right? Because, you know, that is where I think a lot of us are socialized to put our identity, right?
That's right.
Especially in sports, because it's so competitive.
That's right. And we reward it. We reward competition, right? You know, when I first really started doing this, I was working with this professional player. And he was at the time, so I met with him here in Santa Barbara. We go onto the tennis court, and you know, I'm a 52-year-old guy. I play high-level tennis, but I'm 52. He's 25 at the time. He's 90th in the world. We hit for an hour and a half. 8 months later, we're together at a tournament, and we're all sitting down at dinner. He points out to everybody, he goes, you know, when I was with Allison in Santa Barbara, he didn't win a point. And I was like, what? He goes, you know, you didn't win a point. And I go, well, that's ridiculous that you were keeping track of that. I'm a 50-year-old guy and you're a professional. And that's just how he rolls, right? Everything is winning or losing. And that's not where I would put my identity. Right? That's not a healthy. And so what we see happen when you put your identity on winning and losing, then we see what played out with that match that I first started talking about with those kids, is you see a player willing to do whatever it takes to win because everything is on that line. Versus if you can look at it and really feel it and know it in your body that actually why I'm doing this is because it actually is really joyful or it's really challenging or it's me really putting myself out there day in, day out. And it's not about just winning. Of course it feels good, but it has to be more than that. Has to be more than that.
And I think in a sense, it's cultural, right? It's so cultural, the way that we're all socialized. And in a sense, the sports world is kind of the epitome of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have a job to do.
Well, it's so cool. It's so cool. So for any of you who haven't watched, there's a documentary right now on Netflix. Yeah, on Netflix. That's from the Tour de France from last year. And I highly recommend it. It is off the charts, showing what we're talking about right now, about how amped up and how just it's all pure fight. But the question in that is, so I have a couple questions from that, and I'd love when you watch it, we'll get together again, because it's an incredible documentary. Can you, and this goes back to your talk with Heather also, can you be in an environment, and this could even go to the work culture, can you actually be in an environment where everyone around you and the entire environment is propped up on doing things or pushing your body beyond what the body should actually be able to do? Can you do that and still feel your body? I don't know. Can you actually ride for 21 out of 23 days, 150 miles a day, and feel your body? Or is that even possible? So do you learn? Are you forced to detach? That's the first thing. That's fascinating. But in this docu-series, what you see play out is what I'm trying to get at here too, is when you feel safe enough, connected enough, and a sense of belonging enough, the goodness and the true who you are really plays out. And I won't ruin it for anyone who watches it, but in episode 10, we see that play out. And we see that play out in such a beautiful way that it encapsulates when you feel that way, and who we truly are is benevolent. So watch it, episode 10.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to come back. Anka's got a question, but let's bring us back so we can be in the whole group just as we're coming to a close here. And there we are. So yeah, Anka, what's your question?
Actually, it's not a question, it's a sharing. My workplace before this job right now was not competing, but it was not a healthy environment. And I was constantly trying to keep up a ventral state in a not ventral state, kind of sympathetic dorsal state around me. So it took so much energy that I know the difference now, since I'm in a new job where the team is really good. We are there for each other. You can be human, and I have so much more energy in my everyday. Yes. And this contrast was so interesting that it's very important in which environment you are the whole day. So you can keep up your ventral in an easy way, and not, you don't need to hold it on against sympathetic survival or dorsal survival. So yeah, you probably can only detach in those environments after a while.
Yeah, you're bringing up a really good point, right? And that is that, and ultimately, the most powerful cue of safety is others who are safe. I mean, really, to us, we can do all of the self-regulatory resources and all of that, but if we're surrounded by others who are in a more threat-oriented physiology, it's really challenging. And the ultimate gift from all of this work, this play in polyvagal, being polyvagal informed, is to really recognize the power of social interactions that are playful and trusting and supportive, and how that actually feeds health, feeds wellness, and what I'm saying, feeds performance, which then feeds more back to the other, which then keeps feeding, and you create this co-regulatory loop. And that's what we're after.
That's what we're after in the whole world, Michael.
That's
right?
right.
That's what we're we're doing in the Polyvagal Institute is trying to really bring this frame into the world.
Exactly. And so the question is, what part can we do? What part can we do, right? Where we can turn competition or evaluation or this not belonging, this exclusivity, what part can we do to co-regulate, to play, to be supportive?
I think we have opportunities to do that every day.
Every day.
I was very aware at this conference with some of the younger people that were there that were really insecure, to give lots of support and cues of safety.
You got every day, right?
Yeah,
Go to
every
the
day.
market. Every day when you go to the market, you have an opportunity, right? Anywhere you go. So
Let's just take one more, Karen. You hadn't spoken, so I'm going to give you the last question or comment.
Yes, I actually, when you were speaking, Michael, about that, the Tour de France, it got me thinking. So I used to do triathlons all the time. And last summer, I was actually in Santa Barbara doing the short Santa Barbara Tri.
Oh, nice.
And all of a sudden, it just hit me as you were talking that I don't think I have ever been present in my body while I've been doing an ocean swim. And they're doing that race. I was, because I hadn't trained. I was like, I'm just going to show up and do this. And so I was like, it's only 500 yards. I can do it. And I got to a point where I was like, I just have to stop and slow down and enjoy the swim. I'm just not going to worry about how long this takes me. So I guess my question is, I don't know what the question is. Maybe it's just sort of like, what can someone do to stay more in their body when they're racing, when the goal is also to finish? Because I feel like when my goal is to get out of the water, maybe that's when I'm not present. So like, what would you tell your athletes?
Yeah, I think you answered your own question right there. In that, yeah, it's being present. Where are you? Like where we started today, that practice of meeting yourself where you are, right here, right now. And at the same time, it's okay. It's okay to fight through that swim. That's okay.
Yeah.
You just have to really recover, right? So sometimes we do have to fight. Sometimes it really is risky, right? I did the Santa Barbara Triathlon. I did the long course, not this year. And my wife actually, that Santa Barbara Triathlon is really old. Many, many years ago, it went under. My wife bought that and out of bankruptcy and turned it back into what it is today. So when you say that, I have a really soft spot for the Santa Barbara Triathlon. First year I did it, I had a full-on panic attack out there. I literally, because all of a sudden everybody, and I can swim, but everybody's running out there and bodies are hitting bodies and people are, and it was so much threat and danger that I had to just pull up. And like you, I had to meet myself where I was, which was not in a good place. And I had to just sit there and float until I could do the same thing you did, which was like, I'm not doing this at all for time. I'm just doing this now to actually swim and be in the ocean and all that. So it is tricky, but sometimes you do have to fight. Sometimes the threat is real. Sometimes the body is so overwhelmed that you just know. But there's a difference between fighting with awareness and just reacting and imploding.
Oh yeah, big time. Wow, thank you, Michael. What a great discussion and exploration.
Those are great questions.
Really great. And for those of us as therapists, it's very interesting because it's bringing a lot of the same issues that we work with just into a different context, right? And I'm curious about how do you guys manage this issue in that context?
Exactly. Right, because you see it's the same, right? It's the same human.
Being human, yeah.
And that's a phrase that Maddie, that's why I wanted to give Maddie credit, that showing up human.
Yeah.
Showing up human. That's what this is about. So is it okay for me to announce something? Because we're going to have, would that be okay? So next week on Thursday, and if you could post it in your group, we'll be doing a free community conversation around creativity. Beautiful. And I'll be doing that with Maddie, who is on here, and then another lady, Heather Doyle Frazier. And so we're going to have a community conversation around creativity through the polyvagal lens as both
Wonderful.
sort of a portal into managing your physiology, but also an expression of your physiology.
And when is that, Michael?
It'll be next Thursday. So Thursday, the 13th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link with details if we can post it.
Okay, yeah. You don't have that link now that you could put in the chat?
I don't. But,
Okay.
but
All
yeah,
right.
it
You
will-
could put it in the app, the Mighty Networks app.
in the Mighty Networks app. That would be great.
Yeah. That
So,
sounds wonderful. Next Thursday, which would be the 13th, right?
13th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
4 Eastern. Oh, I
And
can't-
and Maddie just said we'll be recording it too. She just
Oh,
put it in
good.
the chat. I don't know if she put the link in the chat, but
Okay.
we will record it and then we'll post it in our little community group also.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And Beth, who was just asked a question, she's going to be our guest coming up in our little Play Zone Pro course, that coaching deep dive. So Beth is going to speak, but that's not open to the public. But,
Okay. We can do more of these too.
Yeah.
You know, this was a big part of Jendlin's work in Felt Sense, is crossing this with this and that with that, and then something new comes.
That's right. Yeah.
Not through reducing these things, but through being with each of them and noticing how each of them changes as we grow with each other. So thank you. That was really
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's always good to see you. And
always wonderful.
so for those of you that don't know, Jan and I talk pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So we share pictures of our
We're polyvagal pals.
polyvagal pals. So
Don't compete.
there's no competing.
Support each
No.
other.
Oh, and Shemena put the link in the chat.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So everybody got that who wants to.
Thank you all for such wonderful questions and for giving us your attention. It was
Yeah,
great.
thank you for showing up, being with us. Next month, we have Mark Lewis coming. So Mark is in my book. He wrote The Biology of Desire, and he's a friend who lives in Toronto as well. He's really developed a learning model of addiction, which was what I've incorporated into the Felt Sense Polyvagal model. And Mark is a lovely person. So that will be really fun and informative. He's also now interested in IFS. He's become a clinician. So we'll have a great conversation there. We're really lucky to have him. And then in September, we have Andrew Datursky, who is the grandfather of harm reduction. He wrote the book. He edited a book years ago. Very interesting guy who does a lot of mindfulness practice and psychotherapy. And really will speak very, very informatively about harm reduction and the model that he uses with people. He's in New York City. So we have some really great people coming up soon. So thanks for being with us, everybody. And we'll see you next month. I hope you stay safe and well and have a good July. Okay.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for Sean for hosting. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, Michael. Thank you.
Bye, Shane. Bye, Emma. Bye, Beth. See you soon. Thank you, Jan. That was really fun.
That's great, eh?
Mhm.
Good